Yes, and actually this is a really great block because there's like not that many people. So if you want to sit someone there, that's good. Yeah, and they're probably here too. Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, we are here, and I'm just going to add a page real quick. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about today is that you have a what on Monday? You have a quiz Monday. And it is only on basic sig figs, no scientific notation. So section 2.1 only. Basic sig fig math. No scientific notation. Okay? And there will be a list in the homework and with the quiz about any extra practice you can do. Okay, so check Teams for extra practice. Second thing is, this is a long weekend and I would like to finish this course, so those of you taking grade 12 chemistry will actually be prepared for grade 12. So there will be a little bit of homework this weekend. There will be 2 videos. So you're basically going to be finishing whatever we do in class today. There will be 2 videos plus some exercises. Okay, I've written it all up on the board, but it looks really scary because it looks like there's like 100 million things for you to do over the weekend. There's really not. There's really the quiz. There's really 2 short videos with some exercises. And then there is finishing up anything that you don't finish from today. But you will have time to work in class today, so chances are you'll get at least some of that done. Okay? So it's not as scary as it looks. It looks horrendous, but don't panic, okay? But don't leave it all till Sunday either, because otherwise you'll be like, this is too much for one day. Break it up over at least 2 days, okay? So you don't drive yourself crazy. Today we are going to start with learning our calculator on page 28, page 28. Also, I want you to make sure you have your calculator out. So that if you don't know how to use it yet, you will learn how to use it. If you do not have a calculator, please come and borrow one from me. Okay, yes, sure. So chances are that most of you, not all of you, but a substantial chunk of you have not yet learned how to use your calculator properly. People think they know, but often they don't. You will want to be using this magic button here. Unfortunately, it takes 3 different forms depending on what your calculator is. There's no standard button for it. It will look like either EXP or EE or times 10 to the X, but not 10 to the X. Not just 10 to the X, times 10 to the X. So if you cannot see that button on your calculator, call me over. Sorry. Yes. Hello. No, not that one. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Hi. Yeah. All right. Now that you have found that button, here are the buttons that you are not going to use. Do not use the caret. Do not use x to the y. Do not use 10 to the x without the times on it, okay? It needs to have a times. Do not use those three buttons. So we are going to practice typing one thing in. So you are going to type in 6.02, and then you're going to use whichever of these buttons that your calculator has, and then 23. Does that work okay for you? Hopefully. Now, if you touched the multiply button, you have done it incorrectly. If you typed in 10, you have done it incorrectly. If you touched the caret button or the x to the y, you have done it incorrectly. So you should only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 keystrokes. Okay? Now, just because sometimes you'll have to borrow a calculator that is not your own, I'm going to show you all the buttons, the yes and the no's. Okay? So here we go. We have no to the caret. Okay, do not use the caret. Yes to exp. Yes to exp. No to x to the y. And just because we can, I wanted to show you this. This number here, this means 3.8495 and 51. This number over here, that means times 10 to the 18. Some calculators don't show you the times 10. They'll just throw that 18 over there and expect you to know that means times 10 to the 18. Over here, some calculators may present you with that. This number here, that means 3 times 10 to the negative 2. Okay? This one means 5.78 times 10 to the 3. That's what those numbers mean. You'll see that different displays on different calculators. All right. So here you may also see a little x with a square. Don't use that one. It's just as bad as x to the y. So don't use that. But if you have times 10 to the x, that is a happy button. Use that one. Okay? And some of your calculators will, when it shows up, it'll actually show times 10 to the whatever, which is nice for you because then it looks like you would expect it to. Okay? Do not use this thing, the second function of the log button. That is a big no. Instead, you might use if you happen to have the one that says EE, that's the one you will use. Yes? Why? Why are we not using the 10 to the x? Because we're not really raising 10 to the x. What we're doing is we're multiplying by 10 to the x. We're not taking an anti-log. Okay, so literally the 10 to the x button is for when you have a number like a pH, which is a log, and you want to do the inverse of logging it. Okay, but it's not really meant to fulfill the same function as times 10 to the whatever. Okay. Sometimes you'll have to press second function. Okay, so you might have to press second and then to get to your EE. Okay, not everybody, yours is good. You just have your one button there. Okay. All right, if you have one of these big massive TI-83, it is usually a second function to get to your EE button. Remember, you're not going to use this 10 to the x thing here. No, 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 do not touch the log button. And in fact, look what I've written here. What do we have in this little, there's no logs. Do not touch the log. Guess what else there isn't? There's no carrots. Do not use the carrot. Do not use the log button. Don't touch them and you'll be good. Okay? All right. Now, on the next page, we're going to look at some common calculator errors and how to fix them. If we have 4 divided by 2 times 10 to the 3, you might be tempted, if you had not heard my big lecture about the caret button, to be typing in 4 divided by 2 times 10 caret 3, or x to the y 3, okay? You might be tempted to do that, but what your calculator will think that you want to do is it will say, okay, 4 divided by 2, I can do that. And then it will see that times, and it will think times 10 to the 3, which means that that 10 to the 3 is now in the numerator. Is that what we wanted? No, they are not the same. Okay, so if you type that in, that's what your calculator will think. You can fix that one of 2 ways. You can use the magic button, okay, or if you're really, really invested in the caret and you cannot give it up, you could put brackets around the 2 times 10 caret 3. The reason I would avoid that is because perhaps you will forget the brackets, okay? And also, let's take a look at how many keystrokes that takes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 keystrokes as opposed to 1, 2, 3 keystrokes. Yes, it is simply more efficient to use the EE button or the EXP button or the times 10 to the X button, all right? And what your calculator thinks when it sees this is it hears 4 divided by 2, but your calculator, when it sees the EE or the EXP, it assumes that that is all one number. All one number. So it's like, oh, 2, you want 2 times 10 to the 3. So it'll put 2 times 10 to the 3 like all as one chunk. Okay? So you don't have to bracket it. Like I said, if you're super attached to the caret and you don't mind using the brackets and you're okay with so many more keystrokes, maybe that's fine. I know that you all are better at typing than I am, you know, on the little devices. I'm like a sloth, but anyway. All right. Also remembering, next page on your calculator, if you type 24 and you want 24 divided by 3 times 4, if you type 24 divided by 3, it'll go divided by 3. Okay, so far so good. Whoops, except for I wrote 2. I meant to write 3. 24 divided by 3. But what will it think when I type times 4? It thinks I'm multiplying by 4. And are these two the same? Not the same. So once again, you have 2 choices, okay? You could type in brackets, right? 24 divided by all in brackets 3 times 4. And then your calculator will know that you wanted to do 24 divided by 3 times 4. So that's okay. However, your calculator also will be fine if you type in 24 and then you divide by the 3, And you also divide by the 4. Your calculator will be happy with that. Yes? Yep. So I don't care which one you use, whatever makes you happy. I'm always like, this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keystrokes. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the one I'd choose, but totally up to you. One more thing we haven't talked about yet is negative exponents. So I'm just going to pop up to the top of this page because there's a little bit of room we can write there. And this is resting on my keyboard, which is why it's not behaving. There we go. Negative exponents. You are going to use the negative key, which on your calculator might also look like this, plus minus. Every once in a while, there's a weird calculator that has it where it's got like a little plus and a little minus, and it's got a little switchy arrow, switchy arrow. You will have one of those on your calculator. That is the negative button. Not going to use the minus button, because you don't want to subtract the exponent. You want to make the exponent negative. Yes? So use the button that means negative. Sometimes it'll work okay for you if you use the minus button, but sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the calculator, and it depends on what you're doing with it. So just use that one rather than the negative button. Okay, where did we get to? So we're going to try typing this in. Okay. And you're going to tell me if you get the same answer as I do. And if you want like a little how to enter it in, you can follow this. Okay. And if you got something other than that number on your calculator, please call me over and I will help you figure out where it went wrong. Did it go wrong? Okay. Let's start with you want 8 times 10 to the negative 1. So 8 times 10 to the, this one here, and then negative, this one here, -2. Okay, and then divided by 7 times 10 to the 3. So check that one. 7 times 10 to the, you don't need a negative, yeah, 3, perfect. And then because you're dividing again, divided by 5 4 equals. Hooray! Okay, yeah. Anyone else have to learn how? You good? Okay. All right. If you find at any point your calculator does something weird, let me know and I can help you out with it. It's so funny, I spent all this time teaching this lesson. Halfway through the semester last semester, I had a student learn how to use the EXP button because they had fallen asleep during the first lecture on it. And they were like, what? You can do that? And I'm like, yes, you can do that. All right. Now, one thing I want you to watch out for, sometimes people get excited and they're like, I'm going to type times 10 and use the EE button, right? So if I wanted to type 7.3 times 10 to the 2, Sometimes people will type 7.3 times 10, and then they'll be like EE or EXP or times 10 to the x 2. And the problem with that is that you now have 7.3 times 10, and you also have times 10 to the 2, because that's what that means, which means you now have 7 times 10, 7.3, whoops, 0.3 times 10 to the 3, which is not what you want. And I need to fix that because I forgot a decimal there. Okay, cool. So never type times 10 when you're dealing with scientific notation. Stay away from the times button. That's just talking about the negative button. And I'm going to get you to do these exercises. There's a couple of them. You know what? Just work through them. It won't take you long. Also, make sure you are rounding these to the correct sig figs. What's the rule for multiplying and dividing? Round to the least number of sig figs in the calculation. And if you end up with a weird answer when you get to number 5, call me over. Okay? Actually, maybe I should mention this to everyone. Sorry, before you get started, look at me again. Yes, I will be right with you, but I want to talk about number 5 because some people, when they do number 5, they will get a number that says 0.00000000002. Okay? And then you're like, are there any digits after that? I don't know because my calculator screen does not go that far. Yes? 2 ways to fix this. Number 1, fix number 1. Multiply your number by 1,000 and see if you get extra digits. Okay, and you should get 0.2 something, 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 something. You would still need to know that that was 3, 6, 9 is times 10 to the negative 9, but you might see other digits. Fix number 2 is actually the better fix, and that is to look up your manual for your calculator, which can be found online. So look up the calculator manual online and find how to set it to scientific notation mode. All right, so if you have numbers like that where it's like, uh-oh, it looks like it got cut off, either just multiply by 1,000 and that'll show you extra digits, or figure out how to put it in scientific notation. Some calculators, in fact, my favorite calculator of all times actually has it printed on the back how to do it. I knew there was a reason I love this calculator. you'll go with your 2 sig figs, not decimal places. Decimal places is for adding and subtracting. When you multiply or divide, you look at the number of sig figs in the question. 2 sig figs, 2 sig figs, that means your answer needs to come. Yes. Yeah. Right. And so you ended up with this. Okay, so like I said, either, oh, nice. You have the good button. That button. Okay, it might, because it's an E and not S, it might be color. I don't know. But okay. Okay. Oh, okay, hang on. Load, load. If I have someone else with this thing, I'll put it. So, and then you can type 2, and I'll put your sample notation, how many decimal places you want, probably 9. And then you want the back, load, load, load. 6. And then 9. So that'll be like that. Or you can go lower, and then you can do normal, which is okay, very nice, right? Right. Okay. 0. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay. This would round to the -3.02, yeah. But it just yeah, and that's because you multiplied by 1,000. So your answer is 1,000 times bigger. So let's try just dividing that by 1,000 again. Okay. Yes, and that is actually okay. Let me just see if you have a mode on here. Okay, ooh, ooh, you got the good button though. You have this button. Ooh, that's good. It should go. It should. Why is it not doing it? I was so excited. Oh. 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 Okay. Okay. Never mind. Yep. Yes. Absolutely. Uh-huh. Did you get the? Did you check the answer? Yeah. You did. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. Yes. You do not need to put brackets around this. This will know that it's all one number. Yes. If you're doing the, you would need to put brackets around 3.1 times 10 times 4.4 kilogram. Yeah. And you had one more thing? Yes. So what you would do for this is you would count places. 9, you would need to use an extra decimal place 9 places. So that's 10. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's because when you're multiplying and dividing, it makes it go to the lowest place in the function. Yeah, so you either have to do no, or no, there's not that. Oh, oh, yeah. Okay. But we have to only right? So it might not be the final equation, but it'll give you something close. So let's do this and now we have that. Let's see what happens with that. Yeah, so it'll give you like 3. Okay. But that's kind of good. Okay. There should also be in there somewhere a mode. How are you doing? Okay. So, yeah. 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 So let's just plug that in. Okay, how are we doing up here? Yes. Okay, so let's look at so we're going to do this. Yeah. Now let's say you want to go back to normal rotation. Well, what'll happen is, let's say that you have right here. Hold on, hold on. Are we ready for another mini lesson? Or do we need another couple minutes? Another 2 minutes? We'll give you another 5 minutes. Does it sound good? Okay, let's do another 5 minutes. It's because now we're adding in potassium to go into the places that are decimal places, and you cannot just do it on your calculator. Yeah. So is anyone going to rush home tonight and watch those videos, or do I have until tomorrow morning to do them? Are you rushing home and doing them tonight? Okay, then I will make sure they go up tonight. Yes. Okay, let us move on then to page 35, sorry, 35. And this is adding and subtracting in scientific notation. This is the most common place for people to make mistakes because it's so tempting to type the numbers into the calculator, press equals, and write down what you get. That will not work. Okay? So don't do it. You are not going to be using the EXP button for this because you are only going to be adding the coefficients, the mantisses. Okay, you're not going to be working with your powers of 10. Those are going to be separate. So we are going to take advantage of the fact that if you have something like 4x plus 2 equals 6x, you can factor out the x, okay? And then you are left with 4 plus 2, the coefficients, is equal to 6. Okay, but we're not going to be factoring out x, we are going to be factoring out times 10 to the x. Okay, so let's take a look at a simple example of this. We have, why is it getting all funny on me? Hello, there we go, that's better. 4 times 10 to the 3. And we have 2 times 10 to the 3. We can factor out the times 10 to the 3, and then we can add the 2 coefficients. So we have 4 plus 2. So we end up with 6 times 10 to the 3. Is good so far? All right. Let's do it with numbers that actually have decimals in them, so we need to do something with significant figures. So we've got a 10 to the 4 in both of them, so we can factor out the 10 to the 4. And we then will take our coefficients, 4.5 and 1.75, and we will add them. If you wish to do this part on your calculator, you can, or you can do it in your head, whatever makes you happy, and you get 6.25, and you just leave your exponent as times 10 to the 4. Now, remind your partner, what is the rule for adding and subtracting with sig figs? What is the rule? Tell your partner. Okay, what is one of the two rules? There's two ways of saying it. Round to the first uncertain digit. Yes, that's my favorite way of doing it. However, it is also okay to round to the smallest number of, not sig figs, decimal places. Okay? Now, I don't mind which one you use. I'm going to do both here so you can see both of them work. Okay? So we now have 4.5 and 1.75, and if we are looking for the first uncertain digit, we need to identify who the uncertain digits are in our numbers. Who is the uncertain digit in 4.5? That would be the 5. Okay, so that's our uncertain digit, and that is in the 10ths position. Who is the uncertain digit in 1.75? The 5. So that is in the 1/100ths position. When we add those two together, that means in our answer we have uncertainty in the 10ths and we have uncertainty in the 100ths. But how many uncertain digits are we allowed? Only one. So when we get to our first uncertain digit, we need to look to the right and do our rounding. So that is then going to become 6 point what? 3 times 10 to the 4. And that would be your final answer. Now, you could have done this using the decimal place rule as well. How many decimal places in 4.5? 1 decimal place. How many decimal places in 1.75? 2 decimal places. And then in our final answer, we have 1 decimal place. I'll be honest with you though, if you do the decimal places, sometimes you're going to have to take your answer. It will not be in scientific notation. You will have to change it to scientific notation, and your decimal place will move, and your number of decimal places will change, and it might confuse you. So the best rule, still according to me, is going to your first uncertain digit, because the first uncertain digit will not change no matter whether you're moving the decimal place around to fix the power of 10 or vice versa, okay? All right, so there we go. That is our answer for that one. Here's our next one. Now, we would like to factor out our powers of 10, but what is the problem here? I have a 10 to the 3 and I have a 10 to the 5. So do I have a common factor? No. So what I need to do is I need to change one of them to the other power of 10. Just to start with, let's start by changing the 10 to the 3 to a 10 to the 5. Okay, so now it's going to match. That power of 10, did it get bigger or smaller? It got bigger. And it got bigger by how many powers of 10? 2, by 10 to the 2. So that means when I write that first part of the number, the 7.5 has to get smaller by 10 to the 2, which means now I'm moving my decimal place to make that number smaller. So I'm going to move it over 1, 2 places, so it's going to end up here. And we end up with 0.075 times 10 to the 5. Okay. So now we have 2 numbers. Okay, this just walks you through it. And here we are with our 2 numbers that now both have 10 to the 5. So we can now factor out times 10 to the 5. What we are left with is our coefficients. 0.075, 5.25. We add those together, use your head or your calculator, doesn't matter which, but don't use the power of 10. You will literally, if you're using your calculator, you will just type in 0.075 plus 5.25 equals, there's no exponent, no times 10 to the, just that, and you get 5.325. Okay, the 10 to the 5 takes care of itself. It's already there. You don't need to muck around with it. Okay. Now we need to look and say, do we have correct sig figs? Well, we are adding and subtracting, so what do we need to look for? Uncertain digits. So in the 0.075, it would be the 5. In the 5.25, it would be the 5. So we have uncertainty in the thousandths position, and we have uncertainty in the 100ths position. Yes? Mm-hmm. So we have uncertainty in the hundredths and in the thousandths. We're only allowed to have 1 uncertain digit. So we are going to look to the right, and that's going to then round up. So that's going to become 5.33 times 10 to the 5. Is good? Okay. You could use decimal places here. 3 decimal places, 2 decimal places, 2 decimal places. Okay? But like I said, sometimes that messes people up when you're moving things around later. Okay? So now let's take a look at going the other way, because it doesn't matter whether you convert to 10 to the 3 or whether you convert to 10 to the 5. So let's convert 5.25 times 10 to the 5. Now we're going to convert that times 10 to the 3. This time, the exponent got smaller by 10 to the 2. So the coefficient needs to get bigger by 10 to the 2. So we're going to take 5.25, move our decimal place over a couple of places, and it ends up there. All right. Now we have the exponent times 10 to the 3. So we'll factor that out. We have 7.5 plus 525. Our uncertain digit is in the tenths and in the ones. So we have uncertainty in the tenths and in the ones. So we're going to look to the right, and we end up with 533 times 10 to the 3. But it's not okay to leave our answer like that, because it is not in standard notation, but it is also not in scientific notation. So let's change it into scientific notation. We need to move our decimal place 2 places. Okay, and we've shown that down here. Our decimal place is now in between the 5 and the 2 3s. So that number got smaller by 10 to the 2. And this number got, then our power of 10 has to get bigger by 10 to the 2. And this is where I say that it gets a little confusing if you go with decimal places, because if you look at your question, you have 1 decimal place and you have 0 decimal places, but by the time you have finished converting this thing into scientific notation, you have 2 decimal places, but your uncertain digit is staying the same everywhere. Here's our uncertain digit, that's our uncertain digit, that's our uncertain digit. It's still that one that is the uncertain digit. So that's why I prefer the uncertain digit rule, because you can get confused when you convert to scientific notation and the decimal point moves. Okay? I think you more often end up in scientific notation if you convert to the higher power. But that's not a guaranteed rule. It also sounds a little bit like a religious experience, convert to the higher power. But anyway, so make sure that you are adding and subtracting the coefficients only on your calculator, not the powers of 10. And you cannot do adding and subtracting if you have not converted everything to the same power of 10. Would you like another example, or would you like some time to work on these questions? Working? Excellent. So, page 37, working through those. Stop on the recording here. Stop.